Welcome to my outlook and my predictions for 2025 for the commodity sector. This video will be about the hottest commodity trade in 2025. You'll be surprised. So let's talk about the hottest trade in the commodity sector that I see coming up for 2025. It's a story that nobody's talking about right now, which is the ideal setup that we want to have for the hottest trade. Now, to be clear, this is for the commodities. I also have a hottest trade for commodity stocks in some niche commodities. We'll talk about that in a different video. This is the hottest commodity trade. Let's go. So, the hottest commodity trade for 2025 is Palladium. I know what you're thinking. Palladium has been a terrible commodity to invest in for the past 3 years. Yes, you're 100% right. Let's look at the chart. Look at this. It's been nothing short of a disaster since 2021. Ever since the boom, really the mass adoption of the EV started, Palladium has just, well, you can't say it any other way, collapsed. And then it got enhanced after 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. But you can also see, and we'll get back to that in chart analysis in a minute, but I just want to point it out so you kind of get an idea about the trade setup that I'm talking about, that we have reached this blue support zone right here, which has held up like a champion in 2024. Actually, if we go back 2025 here, so in the past year, once, twice, 3, 4, you can count this, 5, this as 1, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now the 10th time that Palladium has reached this support zone. That is significant. Also significant, the past 1, 2, 3, if you want to count it. So the past 3 times, it stopped at the upper end of the support zone, didn't even reach the midpoint, didn't even reach the down point. That is interesting. Why is this interesting? We are at the end of the year. As you can clearly see, compared to gold or silver, Palladium, this is where we started the year right here, had a terrible year, 2024. So at the end of the year, things get sold that had a bad performance. The institutional investors don't want to have them in their books. But we are seeing right now, at least in the past 2 days, that the sell-off is slowing down. And that is an interesting signal. That means that whoever wanted to get out, they sold here, obviously here a little bit, and then they ferociously sold here, and they're all out. Now looks like most of the sellers are out of the Palladium market. This is exactly what we're talking about, and we're talking about a swing trade long. We are betting on a significant rise in the Palladium prices in 2026 because nobody is invested in Palladium anymore. But let's talk about that in a second. It's a strong contrarian, very speculative trade, and it's not an investment. That's important for me to point out. I am not a fan of Palladium compared to many other people. I believe that the industrial use of Palladium has peaked. Palladium is also not a precious metal. That is a really important point to understand. I understand why it is grouped among the precious metals, but you hear a lot of finance people that don't really know much about the commodity market talk about palladium. In the same breath, they talk about gold, silver. And I can buy the silver comparison a little bit, but definitely not gold. You have to see palladium as what it is, and that is, it's an industrial metal. It's not a precious metal. I've been in the market for 25 years now. I have never heard someone say, whoa, there's a big crisis, I need to buy palladium. I've heard many people that said, there's a big crisis, I need to buy gold. I bought gold on 9/11 when it was around $245 an ounce, I think. Didn't buy palladium. Nobody bought palladium. So that is very, very important to understand, because otherwise you will mix up the different sectors and then you do not understand what you're investing in. So 21 to 24, we saw the collapse of palladium. What are the factors why palladium is down? First factor, we just talked about it, is the rise of the EV. Let's go back to the charts for a second. And when we zoom out, you see that the downtrend started in 2021. Look at this graph of the EV sales globally, and you can see that in 2020 to 2021, we broke the threshold of 5%. So that was the time when EVs, electric vehicles, went from a niche product for like the tree huggers in California and the tech bros to a mass market. And that's exactly, it's not a coincidence that exactly overlaps with the breakdown in palladium prices. We have, and that's not often talked about, the Russian fire sale. So after 2022 and all the sanctions, Russia had to start to sell everything to finance the war in Ukraine. We all know about oil and gas that they're selling to India and China, but they're also a huge base metal producer, so they're selling those as well. Among them is palladium. Russia is one of the largest palladium producers in the world. It's basically Russia and South Africa. So you look at the top 5 palladium importers in the world. It's the UK, it's the US, it's India, it's Italy, and France. 4 of those are countries that Russia cannot export anymore to because of the sanctions. So what do they have to do now? Just like oil, they have to sell palladium with a discount to other countries that need them, like China, like India. So Russia is selling palladium, their palladium reserves, at a discount price as fast, as much as they can. And if you look at the chart again, you can clearly see 2022, mid-2021, right, to mid-2022, palladium price actually more or less went sideways. Forget the spike. There was I think it was an Indian hedge fund, but it was a hedge fund that went belly up because they were short palladium. So that's an outlier, anomaly. But overall, it went sideways, and then it became clear in the summer of 2022 that the war will take a long time, that the sanctions will increase, not decrease, and look what happened with the palladium price afterwards. It collapsed. So that is what we're talking about. That's the second factor. Third factor is that car sales are declining. That is the fear, at least, that's in the market right now, that the car sales will decline. In Europe and in other countries, because of economic slowdown. In the US, well, people because are leveraged up the gazoo. with credit. And if the economy slows down, if people lose their jobs, if inflation rises again, the first thing that people will stop buying is a new car. In the US, the two most expensive things that people buy is a house and then a car. So they will stop buying new cars. Well, if they buy new cars, that means there'll be less demand. Also, less demand for catalyst production. That is what palladium is used for. That is not great for palladium, and this fear really led to the decline in the palladium prices. You can see here, and this again, this graphic, really important. Look at the baby blue. Only 4% of palladium is used as an investment. Yeah, okay, we can debate if you want to count jewelry as an investment, but even then, we're talking about roughly 14%. On the other hand, as you can see, we're about 86% industrial usage of palladium. Palladium is not a precious metal, it's an industrial metal. It would, comparing it to the gold price would be the same like saying, well, aluminum should be at all-time highs because gold is at all-time highs. It's the same thing. So as you can see, if the car industry has problems, will have problems, then obviously palladium will have a giant problem. And here again, worldwide production of palladium. Look at this. It's Russia, it's South Africa. Those are the big players. And we talked about it, the fire sale in Russia. So now let's get to the meat of the video. 2025. What are the factors and the reasons for the trade? So for palladium prices going up. The first one is a major chart signal. There are two chart signals. The first one is that we talked about, that the blue support zone, let me switch to the weekly so you understand how far back this goes. Look at this. This goes all the way back to 2000. This is how important the zone is. And we clearly had, if palladium stays below it, it goes lower. If it breaks above it, it goes up. You can also see the power that the tight, small palladium market has once buy signals get triggered. Look at the run up here, here, and obviously the monster move right here. So we are at this support zone now, this super important blue support zone. I showed you earlier, we have successfully tested it 8 times in the past year. So this is the first buy zone. Anywhere you feel comfortable, you can get in here. Ideally, it'll test the midpoint and be successful, something like this here. Maybe even the lower end. But the lower end, that would have made sense like right now, in December, in the sell-off, right? When everybody sells off for year's end, and it's not selling off. So that's very interesting. The second signal is obviously if we break this double resistance zone, this yellow horizontal resistance zone, and then the downtrend. Once we get over there, it's party time with the palladium prices. And you just saw in the long-term chart how explosive the palladium price reacts when it starts to get going. And one of the reasons is because we have a completely bombed out sentiment. Nobody, I mean absolutely nobody is invested in palladium anymore. That means everybody will have to buy a commodity that's a smaller commodity, that's not as liquid as gold, not as liquid as silver. And then as an ace up our sleeves, we have the possibility that after 3 years of war, Russia will run out of their palladium reserves. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that will cause a price explosion. And the great thing, because the sentiment is so negative and the price is down so much, we don't even need facts that Russia is running out of reserves. We just need rumors. That's good enough. And the palladium price will be up and running. So, how do I plan to play the palladium trade? I told you it's a swing trade long. I do not like palladium as an investment because of the bad fundamentals. Not be a buyer. If I want to own something in the precious metal sector, and again, palladium, not a precious metal, right? Then I'll buy gold and I'll buy silver. If I want to own industrial metals, I like niche industrial metals like titanium, for example. I like zinc for 2025, not palladium. But as a swing trade long, speculative, yes, please. This has a big, big upside. I gave you the idea. Ideally, you buy in or at the support zone that we talked about in the chart, right? This blue zone right here. We are right at it. We already triggered it, tested it successfully, but we might, have a sell-off day that might push us to the midpoint, even the lower end of the channel. Nothing changes if we test the lower end of the channel like we did in August successfully. And I call this a touchdown trade. What does that mean? I'm going for the win with this trade. So I want to get in the support zone that we talked about. And then once palladium starts moving, I'm putting my stop on an entry level, and then I'm going to let this run. And if it breaks out and works out, it's going to be a great trade that's going to offer us gigantic upside. And if it doesn't work out, then I get stopped out on the entry level, and it'll be a plus minus zero trade, which is fine for, a hottest trade recommendation. After I get in, obviously you want to put your stop below the lows of August, which is pretty much exactly the lower end of the blue support zone, because once we break below that and confirm, then we'll have the next leg lower in palladium. So that's it. That's how I'll play it. Please keep in mind, I'm not your financial advisor. This is not financial advice. As I said before, this is what I plan to do. I have not done it. I may not do it. Things change quick in the market, especially in 2025 when Trump's presidency starts on January 20th. So please keep that in mind. Consult your financial advisor if this is something that you may be interested in, and act accordingly. Talk to you later. Have a great start to the new year. Bye-bye.